Welcome back to the pad. We have just had a very dramatic race here in Berlin for round 7. Oliver Askew has joined me at the pad to go over some of those key moments. Let's start with Mitch Evans and what happened to get him the lead and the win of the race. Starting with this, he's P3 behind his teammate Sam Bird at this point. Now, I'm going to stop just before he tries to make the move because Mitch told me at the end of the race that this wasn't about energy, it was about balance. Now, what does he mean by that in terms of his teammate?
Well, it was about beating his teammate to win the race. That's what it comes down to. He knew that both him and his teammate had a powered advantage and a battery advantage over the Envision car of Sebastian Buemi. And yeah, he went into this moment here. It was a beautiful sequence of corners. Like, he timed everything perfectly, won the race. It was an impeccable last 2 laps by Mitch Evans. Yeah, and you can play it in this situation here. Simply, yeah, the 2 cars are on the inside. For one, there's the accordion effect.
Yeah.
So Sam Bird has to brake slightly earlier.
Okay.
And 2, they have such a tight corner radius to make, and so their entry speed and minimum speed is going to be much lower than
Well, let's have a look at that, because there's 2 things I actually want to ask you about this. The first of all is that this is clean racing between 2 teammates.
Yeah.
An agreed move. And then as we get to this point, I want you to just tell me, if you are James Barkley, Jaguar TCS team principal, how do you feel about that? That is close.
That's no problem, as long as he leaves room to the wall.
Okay.
Right? So Sam knows that he's leaving at least, I mean, this is a big gap here, right, to the wall. And he's giving Mitch the option to use that extra bit on this side to avoid contact. So for me, that's just hard racing, respectful racing between 2 teammates.
So how do they know, in the high intensity of a race, giving a teammate a space or any driver space? I mean, how much can you know before that moment to dictate that?
Yeah, just spatial awareness and understanding, how much width you need to leave other cars. Sam probably doesn't see much of Mitch's car here, but he knows he's there to some capacity. And so that he needs to start turning sharper in order to leave him room.
So then what follows is Sam lifting off, allowing his teammate Mitch Evans to pass, and then Evans is straight on the back of Buemi here. And now it is an energy thing.
Yes.
Buemi is having to coast a lot earlier than Mitch Evans. He's down on energy compared to the Jaguars. So this is, it's a seamlessly easy move. He just kind of puts it in the right place.
Yeah.
Right up here, not into the sky, but right into the track, and we'll see how that pays off.
So for me, this was move of the race. So you see this wall here, that's going to end, but Buemi is going to continue on the trajectory of this wall here. So which opens up a space to the inside, basically using the pit lane exit lane in order to get to the inside of Sebastian Buemi.
So it's essentially like gaining a little bit of extra space. So if we just go back a few moments there, you can see exactly what Oliver means. Is this space here before did not exist.
No.
And now suddenly Buemi's left himself a victim, and Mitch Evans can slip right inside and make that move and be up on energy, so it's kind of easy going into a corner because Buemi's already coasting at this point. And as we learn, that's exactly what happened. Mitch Evans went on to win the race.
Yeah, very smart move, and it could be just a matter of paying attention on a track walk, right? Trying to figure out, okay, if it comes down to a last lap pass and someone's defending into turn 1, do I have that option to then go to the inside of the inside wall? So that was a very smart move.
Great insight. Keep an eye out for that one tomorrow. Okay, let's look at another moment. So we've got this here. We're calling this the peloton because it was sort of a theme throughout the race, wasn't it? The idea of getting in the slipstream, trying to manage energy, and not really ever wanting to be in the lead of the race until the very end.
Yeah.
We're going to start with these 2 attack modes because before we get into the peloton, I want to ask you about this because unusually for Formula E, we saw quite a lot of double use of attack mode early in the race. Can you give us an idea of why that might be?
So in an energy critical race like this one, Brazil was similar. You saw cars and teams trying to get the attack mode over with early because it does use more energy than in normal power mode. So by getting that done out of the way early, you have a better understanding of where you are later in the race compared to other drivers around. that surprised me as well, to see those guys going through there immediately. By lap 5, there were multiple cars that had it completely over with. And then they had a really good understanding of what they needed to do, a very clear understanding of what they needed to do to get to the end in the most efficient way possible.
And the other thing about this is, you mentioned before, I believe it's on maybe the next clip here, so that's Jake Dennis getting his attack mode. But on this next clip, I think this is Sam Bird going in. Now, yes, that Sam Bird's getting attack mode, but you pointed out that if we take a look here at Jake Dennis, what's he doing?
He's not hitting the brakes, but he's not accelerating out of this corner. Jake knows that leading this race is much less efficient than being behind a car that's punching a hole through the air. So basically what he's doing is trying to make sure that who is this?
This is Sam Bird.
Sam Bird. Trying to make sure that Sam Bird goes out back in front of him so he has the slipstream effect. But yeah, for me in this race, staying within the top 5 and not having any contact, just staying thereabouts, being defensive when you need to, that was the name of the game. The Jaguar cars did a very good job of that. Later on in the race, you saw Jake, and we'll get to that in a bit, we saw Jake have a little tussle with the Maseratis who were being very aggressive, and that then pushed him out of the top 5 in a space where he didn't want to be.
Sure. I mean, just to go back to this very briefly, it almost feels, in basic race theory, as anti-racing, but it's not. It's the new generation of racing. When it comes down to energy, this is the sort of strategy that we're going to see more. I just want to play that through again now you've explained it. So, don't look at Sam Bird, look at Jake Dennis. Yeah, I can see it. I can see exactly what you mean.
You can see the cars behind him stack.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work.
No.
Because but Sam Bird has lost that much time. And this next clip, I want to stop it here because the focus being on Sebastian Buemi, who makes this pass on Sam Bird, and it doesn't seem like it takes much effort at all.
Yeah.
Is this the same thing? This is just, Sam Bird actually saying, I don't really want to be in the lead right now, please get ahead.
Sure. If Sam didn't want to be overtaken at this point, he would have run a defensive line into this hairpin. It's as simple as that. I'm sure they had very clear orders going into this race, not to lead unless you have a battery advantage, not to lead until maybe the last 3 laps. And we saw that later in the race when Mitch, I think it was 2 or 3 to go, when he really made a decisive move to get into the lead.
Okay, well, let's just go back a second because I want to see if we can get a better look at that corner, just to kind of go into what you said there. Because, like you said, if Sam Bird doesn't want his position lost, he's positioning himself here to kind of cut off the corner, right?
Sure.
And instead, he's fully wide. He's almost leaving a gap, right? He wants this to happen. Yeah. So there we go. That's how that played out. And we saw a lot of that today in this sort of peloton style of racing. Yeah. I think there's one more clip we're going to see as well.
So that's the point there where Jake got moved wide of the 2 Maseratis and fell back into 5th and 6th place.
And there we have, again, that's Buemi doing the move into the lead as well. So, and that is it's a really interesting thing to get your head around. You know, the idea of giving up a lead, almost, a double podium at that point. Yeah. It's hard to get your head around, but that's where we are in Formula E, and it does make it exciting, you can't lie. Yes,
and the strategy isn't so much up to the guys on the pit wall anymore. It's a lot down to the driver in these particular races. So Brazil and this one, very energy limited, and you'll see it becomes a huge strategy race, and the drivers have to basically freestyle out there and not use the throttle when they can. There is a strategy with the lift and coast, the coast and regen tones in your ear. Basically the car getting you to the end of the race in the fastest, most efficient way possible. But when you have the ability to not use the throttle, you shouldn't use the throttle, because then that's just more energy you can use at the end of the race when it really matters. Interesting, great insight. Okay, well, one more clip I want to go through from that race, and that is Sam Bird's move on Buemi towards the end of the race to get 2nd place and Jaguar's first ever 1-2 in Formula E. So here we go, he sets himself up. Now there's one point I really want to look at, so we're just going to look at this move now from this angle, because really it's this angle that I want to look at, because if we just move that a few frames forward, Sam Bird's through the corner with a bit of space, but if we just go back a tiny little bit, Sebastian Buemi seemingly has the line where he can go and take the inside and force Sam on the outside. But it doesn't work, does it? Because it isn't just about that, it's also about the energy. So that's quite a tricky place to be as a driver, because you see the gap, Yeah.
And you try and make it work. So what's Buemi thinking at that point when it comes through?
Yeah, well here he clearly has the inside line for the next corner. It's a very high-speed left-hander, but to only have a wheel up on the Jaguar here, it's not enough to actually make the pass happen into that high-speed corner. There would have been contact and a huge accident, I'm sure.
Right.
So it just came down to being aware that the pass wasn't on.
Okay.
If Sam, if he had hit the brakes just a couple of inches later, he would have overshot this corner, been in the marbles, and it would have been a much easier pass.
Wow.
We call it what would you say, an over-under of a car that's overtaking you, which would be Sam Bird in this situation.
So super fine margins. There's just another thing I want to show you here, or talk about here, which is a real indicator of the energy situation. Now it's just that moment there. I want to go back a little few frames and just really slow-mo that in there. You kind of want to be looking about probably around about here. It might be a bit early, but if we frame that. So Sam's got the lead. Buemi's still holding to the side, but look how Sam just gets like a boost almost, like a bolt as Buemi lifts.
Yeah.
There, and he's away.
It's just a lift from Sebastian Buemi. And Sam was actually fading him into the apex, closing that door and decreasing his radius into the corner so that he had no option other than to let off or have a crash with a sister car.
So. I mean, it's amazing to not just see this, but get to talk about it with someone who's a driver like yourself, because now this is going to keep happening. We're going to see a lot of energy management strategy like this in the rest of the season. So yeah, enjoy these explanations because they're going to make a lot more sense as the season unfolds. Thank you, Oliver.
No worries.